cried the whole night through. Cry me a river, cry me a river. I've cried a river over you. Now you say you're sorry for being so untrue. Well, you can cry me a river, cry me a river. I've cried a river over you.
Folks, welcome inside the Perrier Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, The Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, The Jake Feinberg Show. I can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and what a high honor it is to be able to bring on a woman who has been creating musical vocabulary on the bandstand for the last half century, and deeply connected to the roots of the East Bay and Oakland, but she is world-renowned and an international star. Denise Perrier, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. It's nice to talk with you this morning.
You know, I just this question popped into my head, and I wanted to ask you: did you ever cross paths with John Coltrane?
No, not really.
What was the
other than his music?
I'm just curious about the fact of when you were kind of ahead of, when would you say you started playing professionally in Oakland?
Well, I started playing professionally with a vocal group called the Intervals in Oakland, and that was very late 50s, really around almost 60 turns. And there was a big NAACP gathering at the Fairmont Hotel, which Louis Armstrong and Nat Cole, Sammy Davis Jr., a lot of luminaries were there, and Pops picked us up at that time and took us to Las Vegas. So that's kind of when I started, and that was starting off in Oakland. Prior to that, I had been actually more involved in dance than in music. And from that time on, then I went out as a solo performer around end of 62, shall we say, and kind of left the area. So then 65 I left and went to Australia. So I was in and out and around Oakland and Los Angeles and San Francisco. But getting back to your first question about Coltrane, I didn't really interact with that so much during that time.
No, I just can you paint the picture of what the vibe was like in the East Bay in the late 50s? How much of it was black-owned, commerce-based area?
Oh, there was quite a few clubs, namely Esther's Orbit Room. 7th Street was the main street for a long time there, that both Esther's Orbit Room and I'm trying to think of the Slim Jenkins. Slim Jenkins was a very prosperous club, very elegant too. And
What was it, the left bank or something like that, or I'm trying.
No, Left Bank was in Berkeley actually, and owned by a Portuguese couple, and that is where what is the group?
The Montgomery brothers.
The Montgomery brothers,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of their names.
Yeah.
They were. Yeah, we used to go there all ways in the Left Bank, and it was really right in the heart of a residential area, which coincidentally I'm actually performing there next month.
Really?
At the Golden Gate Library, which would have been probably a few blocks away from that same venue. Every year for quite a few years now, whether if I'm at home and not traveling, one woman who has been responsible for putting music at the library for years, and Josephine Lee, it's her birthday. It comes around the same as Dinah Washington's, and as I've done a lot of different tributes to Dinah, she always asks me to do the end of the series, so I'll be right in that neighborhood where that club originally was.
When you were with the, I did 2-hour-long interviews with Bill Cosby before the world caved in on him, and he was talking about Smokey Robinson taking his groups to these black theaters in Washington, D.C., and they'd have 5 sets, and the girls would have to, in between sets, go back and change, and it was pretty intense amount of work. Were you guys doing? How hard was it or how rigorous were those gigs that you were on, insofar as? Did you guys tour outside of the Bay Area with the intervals, and what was that? How?
Well, yes, we went to Las Vegas, but we mostly were a local group that worked at that time. They had clubs down the peninsula that were they weren't primarily black clubs, if that's what you were speaking of black owned or
right.
Black patronized clubs. The Intervals were a group that really we were more in clubs that there were no blacks a lot of times. We had the kind of repertoire that was sort of in between the Platters with the one girl and the guys and the beautiful harmony, and we were more sophisticated and not very much of a bluesy, or we didn't have that appeal.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so that back there during that time, that's more what I was doing and involved in, and we were not a really classic jazz act then. Jazz came to me a little bit later. My jazz repertoire chops in traveling and learning more about jazz, but it was more that era of one person in the group, Cleve O'Dear, who was formerly, I'm trying to remember the group he was with, but it was way before my time, because
right.
I was the youngest of the group, and he was very well known through another group of the 40s. So it was a different kind of scene for us.
Going back though, I wanted, maybe the better point is, even as a young woman or even a girl, could you talk about how brave it was. Maybe not in Oakland, but just the sort of sociological statement that was being made by black artists like Dinah Washington and so many amazing singers, Billie Holiday and Nina Simone. I mean, for a female at that time, what kind of musical statement was being made by those women, and how brave were they in your eyes?
Well, I think very, very brave, going back before even Dinah Washington. You can go all back to Bessie Smith, for instance, and the deep popularity that she had, and at one time traveling all across country with her own train fleet, and being in places that people were not necessarily nice to her, but still making money, and of course traveling under very bad conditions. A lot of that kind of flowed down to many people that were traveling a lot in during that era, and I think around Dinah's time it started getting better. Of course, when they were in Vegas, they would have to stay in different places rather than in the hotel, and that was not nice. There were significant things that always happened to black artists during that time, and still today I think there's a lot of things that could be said for the same reasons. But back then, I think the women forged ahead and became stars in their own right, and certainly the record industry benefited from all of these women.
We have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I'm going to put this audio track in for you, and we'll come back and break it down.
Okay.
I had a band. I was a co-leader of a band. I don't know if you know who was a bass player named Paul Jackson.
I did an epic hour. I cannot. Paul Jackson was playing upright bass. Yeah, I want you to keep going here, please. I know Paul. I know Paul well. Yeah.
I hope I got the right one. The one I'm talking about ended up being with Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters.
It's the same cat. Yep.
Yeah, that's Paul. Yep. Okay, I was 19. Paul was 16, and a bunch of us musicians, we actually should have had a bed in his house because we lived over there, and we just played and played and played. Paul was 16, big, giant, young, sweet guy, and innocent too, and he could play his natural ass off. I don't know if I should use those words.
It's okay.
He was a monster. So we just practiced and rehearsed and write songs, and we just did whatever we felt. And it was down in the basement, and his sister, what's her name? She was a cabaret singer. His other sister was 15. She was on flute. She ended up with the Philharmonic under Leonard Bernstein. Joyce.
I want to read you this quote, and then you can keep going because I want to know more about this band. He said, this is Paul Jackson from our interview. He said, "I started as a string bass player, tuba, bassoonist. As a child, I was listening to my father play stride piano. For the formal part of bass, I had to come downstairs and play with him for a half hour. He couldn't get all his chords right, but he had a terribly unbelievable left hand. He's left-handed and I'm left-handed, but I don't play left-handed." And then he goes on to say this. He said this, "I owe so much to all the Montgomery brothers who lived in Oakland, especially Buddy." He said, "We used," and this could be Bobby Spencer. He goes, "We used to play at the Left Bank in Oakland, which was a juke joint." All right, well, that went on a little bit long there. Do you want to take a guess at who that is?
I have no idea, actually.
First of all, he totally spaced your name. It was Denise Perrier who was the one he was talking about.
Well, because Paul is my brother, but
Well, no,
I was
that cat
raised by
that
his
cat
father,
is a
Paul,
this.
Paul Jackson.
Oh.
My name. A lot of people say, "Oh, is Perrier your stage name?" Well, Perrier, my sister, older sister, Sybil, and I are Perriers, but my dad, which we call, our father, is Paul Jackson Sr.
Okay, before we get it, because I want to go deep into this, but that cat, that was from my interview from back February of 2017 with a guy named Bobby Spencer. He's a saxophone player.
Okay.
And when he told, and basically he went on at another.
You sure that was not George Spencer?
Bobby Spencer. Well, he
Spencer.
He's a sax player.
Sax player. No, this is a different Spencer.
He said that that when those guys would come over to Paul's house, they were all totally in love with you guys. They had crushes on all of the sisters. They were madly in love with you guys, but they were playing all this great music. So just to be clear, your biological father is Paul's father?
Oscar Perrier.
Is Oscar Perrier.
Yes.
Okay, so you're a half-sister to Paul, is that right?
Yes. We didn't go by step and half in our family. Since Paul came to, his father was fighter. He met my mother and then came back to Louisiana and brought us out here at a very young age. So I basically, since age 5, grew up with Paul Jackson being my dad, and we didn't make those strong distinctions about step in our family. So when people say, when I talk about Paul, I say my brother. I don't say my step brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not the way, and that's not the way we grew up. And I just talked to him coincidentally. He's been living in Japan.
Oh yeah, I talked to him on every. Yeah, how's he doing?
You talk to him every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fine. He had some surgery, on his spine, but I think he's doing quite well now.
I just want to get clear on this because this is really important. Your father, who brought you to Oakland? Paul's dad was
Paul. Yes, Paul's dad and my mother.
Okay, so
Rosa.
Paul Jackson Sr. and your mother. Now, so they were together, and they went, and he came and picked you and got you guys from where you were living. Where were you living at that time?
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My sister Sybil and I.
Unbelievable.
Paul and Joyce are much younger than me. They're 8 and 9 years younger than me. So when you're talking about these times, they are considerably younger than me, and then my older sister Sybil Perrier is 5 years older than me. So.
And also to be clear, your mom and Paul Jackson Sr., did they have kids together?
Yes, of course. Paul and Joyce.
Paul and Joyce. Okay, so you're and you said that Paul Jackson Sr. was a fighter. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, he was.
A boxer? What do you mean by a fighter?
Boxer. Yeah.
He was a boxer. He was a boxer.
Yeah, professional boxer. Yeah.
So I know you were older than Joyce and Paul, but when you got out there, was he playing stride piano in the basement? Would you go down there and sing?
Oh, absolutely. I still do.
Go ahead.
That if you don't have it, I will send it to you. That I sing until the real thing comes along, and I always introduce it in the sense that my dad. This is for Paul, and I say that my dad, you would park the car outside of the garage and walk around the corner of the house down into the the rumpus room and get on the piano, and that's the way he would announce himself home. I'll work for you, I'll slave for you, be a beggar and a knave for you. If that isn't love, it'll have to do until the real thing comes along.
Oh man.
So that's the way he liked to. He had a great sense of humor, and he was just the life of the party everywhere. Non-drinker, but always had a big bar for everybody else, and card playing, and always a piano in the basement, being what people then called the rumpus room. There were many parties, and lots of music made down there.
So he basically, I mean, you're telling me he'd come home after a couple of 12-round fights, and then he'd park the car and then just be going.
No, he wasn't fighting by then.
Oh, he was done fighting.
He was done fighting. That was one of the conditions that my mother married him, that he give up fighting.
Wow.
He came from a group of his on his family side, fighters, Rand Jackson, and so many. I can't remember all. Because that's not really a part of my history.
Of course not. No, I guess what I'm curious about is how he met your mom.
I really can't tell you that. I can't remember that. But I know she was a lady welder, and
she was a lady welder.
Yeah, a lot of people came from down south and came out to. During the war efforts, and she was like Rosie the Riveter. Her name was Rosie.
Wow.
And they met maybe at maybe one of his fights. I don't really remember. That's a long
No, but I know this is just so beautiful though. So basically, you guys were staying though with maybe your grandparents or your dad. In Baton Rouge. And then
yes, my father and his family, with my sister and I. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then maybe
he marries my mother, and they came back and brought us out.
Okay, I'm totally clear
California.
now. I feel so liberated. But did your mom have the foresight? Maybe you weren't old enough at the time, but she said that for Denise, being such a talented singer or dancer and singer, that there'd be more opportunities for you in Oakland. Did that play into the reason why? Did that play into why she wanted you to come out there?
No, I was 4 years old.
Oh, you were really a baby. So Paul wasn't even. You're telling me that Paul wasn't even born when you went out there?
Of course not.
Oh
Paul
my
was born
God,
in
this
California.
is insane.
Joyce and Paul are 8 and 9 years younger
this is
than me.
legendary. You were 4. Please tell me a great memory of you, of Paul as a young boy when you were growing up in Oakland.
Well, he was always curious and always.
He was a genius.
Always thinking he was going to blow something up because he was always experimenting with all kinds of things.
He's going to blow up the house.
Yeah, and inventing things. And then he had an early interest in music, and he became quite popular when he was young. He was plucked up by older cats that really saw that he could play, and by the time that he started really getting any popularity, like in the mid-'60s, I was gone, and I had left the country and gone to Australia in '65. That's around the time that Paul, 64, 65, maybe like that he started getting very popular and doing things with much more seasoned. Paul and I kind of we didn't really. Our careers were completely different because when he got with Herbie Hancock, and he and Mike Clark were, starting all of this stuff down in the basement of our house. So I heard him sometimes when I'd come back in and out, but I wasn't really around for his growth, but I knew he was getting really, really popular. But
this is unbelievable, Denise. I mean, can you just talk about the I mean, were you guys like, were you down there with your dad, quote unquote? I mean, what did you learn from Paul Jackson Sr. about stage, not stage presence, but how to feel the music and how to emote and how to touch people's hearts?
Well, I got a lot of that from being around Louis Armstrong, to tell you.
Well,
the truth.
then there's nobody. The Satchmo, man. Talk about. I didn't know you were around Satchmo.
And then my
oh yeah.
My father, though, he had this big personality, as I say, he was like the biggest thing in the room or around. Period.
I would have loved to have hung out with that guy
Paul.
every day, man.
Yeah,
what a
everybody
legend.
Everybody loved him.
Yeah.
And he also did a lot of good for people. He at one point he was working with Joe Cargione, the green grocer, and they deliver flats of eggs and different things to people in the Western Addition in San Francisco and different places in Oakland. He was a very generous spirit, and he did a lot of nice things for people. And he was just always the big guy with the telling jokes and sweet guy.
Yeah, I mean, just always helping the downtrodden. Always
exactly.
So when did you meet? Tell me about Louis. Let's just talk about, because it's all to me when I'm in. I mean, I've interviewed 3,500 cats and people like Kenny Barron, the piano players. Like, I mean, he's like, for me, the priority is touching people's hearts. So
that's what I learned, I think, from being around Louis Armstrong in that early years. I think I probably had some of that in me already, but I think I began to appreciate, and by watching him and how people gravitated to him, and it was real. It wasn't a phony act, and he just had this great personality toward and a respect for what he was doing, and people just loved it, gobbled it up. So I think looking at him night after night, I absorbed a lot of that.
Well, I mean, specifically, could you talk about fake, and I know what you mean by that, the sort of extra...
Yeah, a learned kind of posturing on stage, or a certain few things that people learn to say and not mean. He wasn't like that,
I mean, could you talk about? I mean, was it a hybrid of him just playing music and then also how did he
interacting with people from the stage and when he's off the stage? Some celebrities are unapproachable and
absolutely
and not Louis. He wasn't that kind of person. He was very much a people person, and he was very approachable and had time for people, and so that's I think what made his music, and of course that wonderful playing, his horn, and he was really one of the original person that started scat singing. So he had a style that was before that not really heard of, with playing and scatting. But through it all, it was his personality was shining through all of it.
And I guess the thing I wanted to ask you is, when did you originally cross paths with him? In Vegas or in Oakland?
No, not in Oakland. In San Francisco at Fairmont Hotel.
The Fairmont Hotel, was that in the Fillmore District?
Yeah.
Where was that?
No, it's still there. It's a very big hotel
Okay.
in San Francisco. Fairmont, like there's a Fairmont in New Orleans also, and a couple of other places, I think. But the Fairmont Hotel is like on Nob Hill, and very, very illustrious kind of, but especially back then. And they had a big convention for the NAACP. That was when I first met him, and the vocal group, the Intervals, and myself were invited to be on this show. We were in a sense at that time a local group that got a lot of attention and press because we were probably the only one around that had that kind of finesse. We had a musical director, and all of the voicings were set by Chick. I was about to say Webb, but that's the wrong
Yeah,
name.
it's all right. But
Yeah.
it was not so square. It was more sophisticated stuff.
Yeah, it was sort of in between the platters, the high-lows,
Sure.
the people. It was during that time when harmony and people dressed. The guys wore white dinner jackets, and and I wore very sophisticated gowns and the beehive hairdos and stuff of that type. So
I need to hear recordings of this band.
well, I have something I can probably.
Oh, that would be.
Send
I
you,
would just
and
want to. I want to hear that. What that few. It was. There was something. Would you say that there was?
We made a.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we made a CD. Well, it wasn't a CD then.
Right. A
we
record.
made a record called Side Street that became quite popular, and Johnny Otis picked us up, put us in his review, and God, I'm trying to think of some of these things that I'm leaving out.
Well, okay,
But,
let's Denise Perry. Such
but
an
I
honor.
have some of that.
No, I want to play this for you, and then we'll come back and break it down. Okay.
Okay. Mm.
Unbelievable.
I have it. I was talking about it.
Well, no, and actually that one track is on YouTube. Now it's called, and the guy's name is Chick Morris.
Yes, Chick Morris
So
was our music director. And you said it's on YouTube. I never knew that.
Yeah, well, I got 2 emails for it. I'll send you the link to this right now. Because and now in that particular track, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like you guys were background singers.
Well, that's the way the music was then. Chick did our arrangements, and so everybody in the group took different solos. Me more so than anyone else, and Cleve O'Dear is the lead singer. And Cleve, I'm still trying to remember the group that he was with long time before.
What was his name?
Cleve O'Dear.
Cleve
He
O'Dear.
was with a very famous group, and he was quite a bit older than all the rest of us. I was quite a bit younger than the youngest of the two brothers, and then there was Cleve O'Dear, who was a lot older than all of us, and he was with a very popular group that was recorded, but I can't at the moment come and remember his name.
Yeah, I'll be digging on that. I mean, this is.
You have to send me.
Well, no, there's a lot of intervals on YouTube. I mean, the side street clearly comes in. I still love that man, and then there's and this was done on Apt Records, APT. But
that was out of Berkeley.
I mean, looking back at it, were you just kind of Were you able to stop and smell the roses, or was this was it a complete blur for you? I mean, you were the youngest, so how did you handle yourself?
Well, I had a lot of respect from those guys, and the Selena Rigmaiden was our manager. She was married to Jesse, the two brothers that were in the group, and we had a very strong family type of presence, and there wasn't a lot of I guess show business pitfalls around us, because we had somebody managing us, and everybody was pretty sane.
And the types of bills that you, I mean, would you wind up with Nat King Cole, Sinatra? What kind of bills? Who were you sharing the bills with when you went to Vegas?
Only Louis Armstrong. He was the one that picked us up and took us to Vegas. We were a substitute act for the Clare Award singers. I mean, there was a whole lot of different kinds of music in the lounges at that time, and people like Bella Reese and
wow,
many other black performers, as well as what was the big name of the Sam Butera and the Witnesses and all of those.
Oh, well, of course, Louis Prima kind of stuff. Yeah, no, this
Louis
is
Prima kind of things. Yeah,
I did. No, this is really fascinating. I mean, it's funny because it says on the intervals on one of them, it says doo-wop vocal group harmony. Would you consider it doo-wop?
Not really. We were more sophisticated. We weren't really doo-woppers.
Right.
I don't know that the labels were that clear and distinct then. We were maybe you could call us doo-woppers. I don't recall it as that being a doo-wop group, you know.
No, I mean this is so beautiful. I mean, no, this is like incredible. I mean, like, is it at that time when, like in the early '60s, before you moved to Australia, did you get a chance to meet Jack McDuff then?
No, I didn't. I met Jack McDuff later, and of course I am privileged to be on a Grammy-nominated CD that is called "Color Me Blue." Well,
we let it. I mean, I was so excited because the reason I asked is because it was with Joe Dukes. It was with his original group, and I'm like, did they record that? Was that an early recording that surfaced later, or was that like how did you connect with him?
Oh, I can't really remember.
I'm stretching you out, I know. But I mean, like it wasn't during that. Did you pivot to jazz before you?
Much after. Yeah. After this is much after that time. It was not early like that. I'm trying to remember the dates, but it's very difficult to remember all of this kind of stuff on Total Recall. I don't have
Total Recall. No, the McDuff session, it says 92. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Long time.
that is a long time ago. I mean, just for the record, I was born in 1978. So, I mean, I've been doing, this is not about preservation. I know for some people it's like a deep dive into their past. I mean, for me, this is about promotion so that my daughters and future generations can understand how real music was created. And I'm going to ask you about, I know it wasn't totally your bag, but Jimmy McCracklin, King Pleasure, Johnny Talbot, all these. Johnny Talbot was doing Oakland funk music. I know you weren't in funk per se, but you know, my generation thinks.
Yeah, but I've worked with Johnny Talbot in probably 2000 and something a couple of times because he became, and I guess he might still be popular. I don't know because I'm not in that bag, but there was a lot of blues singers that came from around here, and Jimmy McCracklin, when we were two really quite young and too young to really be in the clubs, but we had a friend that my mother entrusted us with called Billy Haynes, and he drove the car, and we'd sneak out to Richmond where Jimmy McCracklin was. And
oh my God! Please tell me what that was. That is insane.
Larry Williams and the Lemon Drops and Jimmy McCracklin, all those bands, to hear them. Then at that same time, in Richmond, the Richmond Auditorium was very popular for music, and Paul Jackson Sr. was what do you call it? Not a lifeguard, but
it was an usher or something like that, or like he worked.
Bouncer. I guess that's.
Oh, he was a bouncer. Wait, he was a bouncer. He was wait, and this was at what? What was
that you have to come through?
Oh my God!
To get in.
Oh man, that's unbelievable.
If you got rowdy, he'd be the one to put you out also.
Oh.
So we got privileged to go to a lot of things that we wouldn't have normally been, and I was really much younger than you were supposed to be in some of these places, but I got a chance to be around people like Jimmy McCracklin and here not playing with them at the same time or anything, just hearing them and music for me.
You were young, but Paul was really young to be a bouncer. I mean, that's pretty young.
Paul Jackson Jr. I said Paul Jackson Sr.
Oh, Paul Jackson Sr. Hold on for a second. So this is what it was all about, because there was this insane black chitlin circuit, Richmond, Concord, and this guy, Charles Sullivan. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you.
I worked for Charles Sullivan with the vocal group, The Intervals.
I cannot. Okay, so this is really important because I've been trying to dissect this time when the Fillmore was a completely black commerce-run district, and Sullivan owned a lot of those clubs down there.
Well, I don't know about his ownership that much to be able to enlighten you on all of that. I just
well, what was your experience? He hired the Intervals and on these.
Well, he was the big guy that hired and fired and took people to other outside of the San Francisco area. But I'm sure that he did probably own several clubs. I'm just not really the person who would know that.
I'm just going to read you something from my second interview with Paul Jackson Jr. He said, in 1968, I was with the 298th Army Band in Berlin, Germany. On the side, I had an organ trio, and we'd play these clubs that are no longer there. First time I got to see Eric Dolphy and Miles Davis was in Berlin. At that time, my sister, Denise Perrier, was doing USO tours with her own band in Vietnam.
Yeah, but I was not with the USO. I was independent. I was licensed to the government, and a lot of people are misinformed thinking I was with the USO. USO were people like Bob Hope that flew in on the...
Right. Well, that was Paul's line. I mean, so it was this, you were independent. He also said that you started as a dancer with Zach Thompson.
Yes, that's correct. I was with the Zach Thompson group in San Francisco, and then with Ruth Beckford's group in San Francisco. That's accurate, but the other isn't about U.S. So
well, no, I want to
living
talk to
in
you.
Hong
I want to
Kong.
ask you when you started. You carved your own. How did you
Get
gain?
to there.
Yeah.
I was living in Hong Kong and working in.
Holy crap! You were in Hong Kong in '60 what? I mean, what was that like?
Oh, it was wonderful.
Unbelievable.
It was exotic and quite wonderful. And this is after Australia. I started working all around the Southeast Asia, living in Thailand and in Taiwan, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, all around the Pacific Rim and Japan. But I was home based out of Hong Kong, and a person called Jack Salveson came through and was looking and auditioning people, not really auditioning them, but looking for people to take over to Vietnam to perform for the military. That is how I got there. But then I became independent of him and stayed on there and had my own groups made up of people from Australia, from Philippines. So I was there during the Tet Offensive. I was there from 67 to 69. And that was my own, after the first 3 months that I was over there for Jack Salveson, I was working on my own, but definitely not. I have some old pictures of being on stage at the same place, entertaining the troops, where Bob Hope would have been flown in, and we were riding in convoys to get there, and so it wasn't exactly. Are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. My Skype, the call thing keeps dropping. Just repeat that again. We lost it for like 5 seconds. Go ahead. You said you would be flying in, and these convoys would be taking you to the gigs.
Yeah, I said we would be sometimes flying in with DOAs on C-130s and C-147s and in choppers,
Oh.
but Bob Hope would be coming in for the USO with all the kinds of, protection and a whole different way of being. But we actually lived there, and were in some very death-defying situations many times.
Could you talk about a specific time when you defied death?
Oh boy, you're conjuring up memories that I haven't.
Well, that's the Jake Feinberg show. I've been doing it for 7 years. I mean, what I'm saying is, if you're going to say something like that, I'd love to hear specific.
Yeah, well, there is, of course, a documentation of this in it's kind of a documentation called Entertaining Vietnam that was produced by Mara Wallace that I'm going to send you a copy of.
Please.
Because a lot of things sometimes I just don't remember for total recall at the moment. So I apologize to you, but I don't really know a lot of times at the moment what I can't really think back to.
Well, I mean, were you caught up like after a gig and then you wound up in some hostile, like, because you were all over Asia, and it was a hotbed of.
Well, we were often in hotbeds of everything. We were traveling in many times in convoys, and and been shot down out of helicopters.
Holy cow! Are you serious? You were your helicopters went down?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I haven't even thought about for a long time that I hadn't exactly thought that you were going to be.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna. This is just part one, Denise. I'm gonna be digging this stuff. We're gonna be excavating this stuff. It's really amazing. I mean, you clearly had an affinity for finding your own voice overseas. Was that a conscious decision?
Yes, a very conscious decision.
And why was that?
Well, I love travel, newness, new people, new foods. And then when I got over to Vietnam, I hadn't planned to stay, but I did see a whole different kind of lack of entertainment. When I remember the first thing that I did was with a guy called Lee Maynard, and he had a little farfisa
organ.
His little,
yeah.
You know what that is?
Yeah, little farfisa, little organ. Yeah, little farfisa organ.
And it was like more country and western. That was almost the only thing that was happening over there at that time on any steady basis of anybody living in the area and getting licensed through the government. And of course, I was young. There was a lot of money to be made, but then when you got over there and start seeing the appreciation of the guys, and they just really didn't want you to stop, and they missed seeing somebody like me forever, and a lot of those kids died. You'd go back from one place to another, and go back 6 weeks later, and they're gone, and ask about them. So it just I just got caught up in many ways of just going from this place to that place, because and then denying. And as a matter of fact, in my house right now, I have the house rules of the Bagdam Kaksam, which is the first hotel in Da Nang up by 3rd Mass. So I just became pretty immersed in that. It was a dangerous situation, but after a while, it just became part of life, and I liked it. It's weird to say, but
no, I think it's so
the adventure.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard for me to really wrap my head around it. Somebody who's never been in, I mean, I've interviewed cats that were full on in Vietnam, before things really got heavy in around 68. I guess, who were you, what kind of, was it a drums, bass, piano? How would you find cats that?
Mostly out of Hong Kong. There were a lot of Filipino, and I had been living in the Philippines also prior to, as I said, I was working out of Hong Kong. So I would go to the Philippines quite often, and I knew a lot of musicians on the Pacific Rim, and a lot of them also worked in Australians and Filipinos especially were two places that had really great musicians. And a lot of them lived in Hong Kong during that time, so it was easy to pick up musicians, and that was primarily the source of. And then there were a couple of Americans, like there was a guy called the Preacher who was in my group for a long time, and he was actually from California, somewhere in California, and he was quite popular. He would have been something like a Wilson Pickett kind of voice and that kind of
His
singer.
name was the Preacher.
No, they. I forget what they called him.
What was his name though?
I can't remember.
You can't remember.
because
I'm going to read off these names here because Errol Buttle, Bryce Rohde, Jack Brokenshaw.
Bryce Rohde rings a bell to me, but that doesn't ring a bell to me from Vietnam.
No, Bryce Rohde was Australian. I've interviewed Bryce, Australian piano player, part of the Australian Jazz Quartet.
Okay, well then that's where I know him from.
Right.
Because, yeah, but I can't really recall a lot of the names of the musicians, but I have some really good musicians from down under and dancers. The girl that did I told you before that I was going to get a copy to you of Entertaining Vietnam, which actually won awards here and other places. She won awards with this documentary, and it has a lot of me talking then, and of me on stage, as well as some of these other people that I'm talking about. And it also kind of goes into documenting the time that almost everyone got killed that was going on this road. And at the time, my boyfriend, who was working with ABC News, Edgar Needham, he came out of a firefight and told me that there was going to be people killed on that road that night, because the press would sometimes, know ahead of time of what was happening. And he says, you cannot go out on that road tonight. And sure enough, all those musicians are dead. So it was, a dangerous time for me and others over there. But when you're caught up in it in a different way, you don't look at it that way.
Did you did you go to the road and people got killed, or you didn't go?
No, I did not go. That's why I'm talking to you today.
Wow.
The rest of them are dead.
So the rest of them did go.
The rest of them did go.
Well, okay. Just one final. We can do part two because we've been cooking here for an hour, and I know you're not feeling great, and you've been incredibly hospitable and wonderful dealing with my questions. But when you got back, or at least when you would return, what was going on with Paul Jackson and Mike Clark? Because they were living together in Oakland.
I didn't come back and live in Oakland. I lived in New York for 5 years. When I came back I lived at 68th and Broadway for 5 years in Manhattan. So I didn't really. That's why it's hard for me to answer a lot of your questions.
No, you're doing great. No, but I mean, I guess is that when you started to expand your jazz bag at that time?
Yes. Well, it's when I started working in Manhattan, that led to me going to the Catskills and places like that, and meeting a very strong ally who is still one of my best friends, Frank Porofsky, who then went on after I left New York to stay with Liza Minnelli for years. But Frank got me introduced to a lot of people in the jazz world, and did wonderful arrangements for me. And I was more of a cabaret singer, not a jazz singer, though. So that was a whole other period of after leaving Vietnam.
Well, maybe we can just pick up on part two at some point and start to vet that a little bit. Does that sound good?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, I got to tell you, it was.
It's funny because I've just been talking with Jeff Kalis, and on Sunday night, was it Sunday night or Tuesday night? Sorry, it was Tuesday night. There was a big kind of fundraiser for Lee Hildebrand, who is one of the most wonderful guys that wrote about the entertainers here. We don't have people like that anymore. Phil Elwood and
Ralph Gleason.
Ralph Gleason, yeah. But Lee Hildebrand had a stroke not so long ago, and so it's amazing the turnout that came out the other night of artists that performed. They had Jeffries in Oakland, which had 2 floors of music going on at the same time, a blues shows up top. And I think Johnny Talbot, didn't you mention Johnny Talbot?
Yeah, well, he's hiding from me, but I love that cat.
I think he was there,
yeah.
And Lady Bianca, and I don't know if Sugar Pie DeSanto was there, but I didn't see anybody, but it was amazing. Calvin Keys.
My man. Did you know Sugar Pie back in the day?
We were not friends, actually. I see him more now probably than back then.
You know who I'm very close with is Domingo Ballantyne, her brother.
Oh, I don't really know him.
Yeah, he's and the only other woman. Did you know Faye?
Bass player.
A bass player, great bass player. Yeah.
I met him in Stockton at my stepdaughter's wedding in Stockton, but I don't know him really as a musician.
Oh, he's I was going to ask you about one more cat. It was Faye Carroll. Did you know Faye?
Oh, I know Faye very well. She was there the other night, and she sang, and she's doing quite well now. Yes, I know Faye, and as a matter of fact, for a while, we had a group that we were singing together. 4 ladies, and we were doing blues things and very, very show business kind of blues. And we did some things at Yoshi's and around. It was Frankie Kelly, Faye Carroll, and myself, and sometimes Lady Memphis, and sometimes Ken. In San Francisco, say in the late 80s, Faye was very popular, and that's when I first really met her. She's going along quite well.
No, she's great, and so are you, and I wish you a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and I will get you a copy of this interview as soon as I can put it up online. And Denise, thank you for entertaining my worldwide audience today, and just keep swinging, and we'll do it again.
Thank you for having me, Jake. And I don't think have your email or things like that. So
I will. I have both your emails, courtesy of Paul. So I will. I will send you stuff, and then just
only use one because the other is non-existent. Denise Perrier at Comcast.net.
That's the one to use.
Yep.
Okay. Let's stay in touch, Denise. Much love to you.
Okay. Same to you. Thanks for the interview.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Still going strong, Denise Perrier. Unbelievable, mind-blowing interview here. We'll be back in a couple hours with George DeQuattro on the Jake Feinberg Show.